All right, we are live. Charlie Marlow here on the Kenny Wallace YouTube channel. Had to go live. 3 massive NASCAR news stories, all breaking today on Wednesday. You see in the headline, Chase Briscoe penalty overturned, Austin Cindric penalized, and also NASCAR sues 2311 Racing. That is a countersuit. So let's break it all down here. I'll go quick. I'm sure Kenny Wallace is going to weigh in on this as well, but let's work backwards. Chase Briscoe, the penalty overturned. I'm going to go right to NASCAR.com. Here's the headline. Appeals panel overturns L2 level penalty to the number 19 team, of course, of Chase Briscoe. Remember, this is going back to the Daytona 500 where Chase Briscoe was on the pole. So I'm just going to read a little bit from this article. The National Motorsports Appeals Panel on Wednesday overturned the L2 level penalty levied against the Joe Gibbs Racing number 19 team stemming from the season opening race at Daytona International Speedway. So this is Chase Briscoe, of course. Okay, the spoiler base was found to be modified on the 19 car. The spoiler base is a single source part and cannot be modified. But in overturning the ruling, the 3-member panel determined, so here's the quote, the panel believes that the elongation of some of the holes on the number 19 Cup car spoiler base is caused by the process of attaching that specific spoiler base to the rear deck and not modification of the single source part. Okay, now remember now, Briscoe initially, folks, had a huge penalty. All right, he was docked 100 driver points, 10 playoff points. JGR was fined $100,000 and deducted 100 owner points, as well as 10 playoff points. Crew chief James Small was suspended for 4 races. So all of that now is rescinded following this appeal. We have 116 people watching live. Appreciate that. So with the ruling overturned, Briscoe is now 15th in the Cup Series standings with 72 points earned this season. And then prior to the panel's decision, Briscoe was 40th in Cup standings. So Briscoe goes to X and he says, biggest points day of my career. We're back. He posted it on social media. And he says, quote, in all seriousness, thank you to NASCAR for giving us the option to show our evidence, and huge thank you to everyone at Joe Gibbs Racing who put in countless hours to put everything together. The 3-member panel was comprised of Dixon Johnston, Hunter Nickel, and Kathy Rice. All right. We also have a quote from Joe Gibbs Racing on this penalty being overturned. Joe Gibbs Racing, quote, we appreciate the process NASCAR has in place that allowed us the opportunity to present our explanation of what led to the penalty issued to our number 19 team. Team owner Joe Gibbs said in the statement, quote, we are thankful for the consideration and ruling by the National Motorsports Appeals Panel. It is obviously great news for our 19 team and everyone at Joe Gibbs Racing. We look forward to focusing on the remainder of our season starting this weekend in Phoenix. All right. So that's the first story. The appeals panel overturns the penalty issued to Chase Briscoe and the number 19 team from Daytona. That is story number 1. But as I said, 3 massive NASCAR stories. Briscoe, you also have Austin Cindric being penalized, and then NASCAR countersuing 2311 Racing and Front Row and Michael Jordan, all that. I'll get to that at the end here, but let's go to Austin Cindric now, okay? So Austin Cindric, this is stemming, of course, from COTA just over the weekend. So Cindric penalized after COTA, and also the number 5 Hendrick team, that's Kyle Larson, hit with suspensions. So Austin Cindric, there was the incident with Ty Dillon in the Cup race Sunday at Circuit of the Americas. Also, so Kyle Larson's team had 2 pit crew suspensions after a lost wheel during the race. But the big story here is the Cindric penalty. and the fact that he wasn't suspended. So this is the incident with Cindric right rearing Ty Dillon of Colleague. Okay. So Cindric loses 50 driver points. He was fined $50,000. So he's dropped from 11th to 35th in the standings. Okay. NASCAR did not give him the one race suspension, something it did previously when drivers intentionally wrecked other vehicles, like Bubba Wallace on Kyle Larson in 2022, if you remember that, at Vegas, and with Chase Elliott on Denny Hamlin 2023 at Charlotte. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, but also reading from this NASCAR.com article. You guys can go to NASCAR.com as well. So Mike Forty, NASCAR Managing Director of Racing Communications. You got this new podcast, Hauler Talk, which is really interesting to hear the way they explain these penalties and overturning them and all that. So Mike Forty says the reasoning Cindric wasn't suspended, including the race was being on a road course with lower speeds and tighter confines already, and that the incident didn't lead to a caution flag. So the previous two incidents that led to those suspensions, that's what I was talking about with Bubba Wallace, 2022 Vegas, and Chase Elliott, 2023 Charlotte. Okay, those suspensions occurred on 1.5 mile speedways. Okay, so let me just see if I can get any more information on this. I'm just kind of floating around X and seeing what everybody's saying about this. Okay, so this is Mike Forty again. This is exactly what he said on that podcast, Hauler Talk. All right, and thank you guys for joining us here. Got 142 of you watching live, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure Kenny Wallace is going to weigh in pretty soon. But Kelly Crandall, she transcribed the quote from Hauler Talk. So here it is. Quote, this is on the Austin Cindric penalty. The reason we landed on a points and fine, we take every situation, every violation as its own unique incident. And I know probably fans don't love hearing that sentence, and it's said a lot. But it's said because it has to be said. It's said because it's true. Sure, we do look at past instances to help inform us, educate ourselves on how we should handle each subsequent one. But each incident is very different. Maybe not very different, but each is at least a little bit different, and oftentimes very different. In this case, we did feel it was significantly different than the previous two, talking about, of course, Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott. I've mentioned that several times. And the reasons are, you look at it, it is a road course with lower speed, tight confines to begin with, and the result didn't even draw a caution. Now, obviously, the caution flag doesn't come out as quickly on road courses anyway, but that did not draw a caution. So those were really the reasons why we chose to err on the side of letting him race this weekend in Phoenix. Mike Forty on the Austin Cindric penalty, why he was penalized, why he was not suspended for one race. All right. So I read you there, discussed there the first two big stories. Chase Briscoe, his penalty at Daytona overturned, and that freaking never happens. Austin Cindric was penalized for his actions at COTA when he right-reared Ty Dillon, but he will not be suspended a race. Did drop a ton in the standings, in the point standings. All right. And then the other story, I'm working backwards. This one happened earlier in the day. And basically, it's the fact that NASCAR is now countersuing 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports, the teams that are suing them, of course, for monopolistic practices. You've heard about this. It's been going on since, the last week of the season, I believe, is when we heard news of this. So I'm going to go to Jeff Gluck's X. He's a teammate, right? Jeff Gluck. We're Dirty Mo Media teammates. Kenny Wallace and everybody involved. So basically, here's what's going on here. All right. Okay. And I'll just read a couple of them. Jeff Gluck posts on X. A new 30-page court filing shows NASCAR has countersued 2311 and Front Row, so 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, and named longtime Michael Jordan business partner Curtis Polk as a defendant, saying all three willfully, this is quote, willfully violated the antitrust laws by orchestrating anti-competitive collective conduct. Okay? So we also have a statement from the attorney for 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. This is Jeffrey Kessler. He says, quote, today's counterclaim by NASCAR is a meritless distraction and a desperate attempt to shift attention away from its own unlawful monopolistic actions. NASCAR agreed to the joint negotiations that they now attack. When those joint negotiations failed, they used individual negotiations to impose their charter terms, which most of the teams decided they had no choice but to accept. My client's lawsuit has always been about transforming NASCAR into a more competitive and fair sport for the benefit of drivers, fans, sponsors, and teams because of their love of the sport. Every major sport goes through a transition to competition when antitrust claims are asserted, and that moment has come for NASCAR. Today's baseless filing changes nothing. We are confident in the strength of our case and look forward to presenting it at trial. Again, that is from 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports attorney Jeffrey Kessler. That was posted by Jeff Gluck of The Athletic and Dirty Mo Media, our teammate. He posted it on X about 3 hours ago or so. I know Bob Pockrass was also weighing in on this. Apparently, this has more to do with what's going to be happening in the off season with a potential trial. So let me just find what Bob Pockrass tweeted about this, and I will wrap it up. We won't go too long here, folks. I appreciate 163 of you watching. Big NASCAR news day, of course. So here we go. Here we go. Do. Can you tell I'm stalling? Here we go. Okay. So NASCAR is not asking for an immediate injunction as far as eliminating guaranteed starting spots for 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Okay, that would all be part of the trial in December if it gets there. That's what Bob Pockrass tweeted. Okay, so NASCAR is asking for an injunction eliminating guaranteed starting spots for the charter teams. So basically saying, like, if you're going to sue us, why do you have a guaranteed spot? But again, that would not impact this 2025 season. This is all moving forward 2026, and we'll see what happens if there is actually a trial coming up in December. And Bob Pockrass also posting, he says, because somebody else, this is what I like, because I'm not a lawyer. I'm guessing a lot of you guys aren't lawyers. So somebody said to Bob Pockrass, explain this to me like I'm 5. And he says, NASCAR alleges that the way Curtis Polk went about trying to organize a boycott during negotiations and other tactics and the teams trying to sue for better contract terms is a violation of antitrust law. So basically, they're both saying this is against antitrust, right? 2311 Racing, Front Row Motorsports, that's Michael Jordan, that's Denny Hamlin. Bob Jenkins from Front Row Motorsports, they're suing NASCAR, alleging monopolistic practices. And then now here we are about 6-7 months later, whatever it is, NASCAR with their countersuit that we have just discussed. And it was announced today. I appreciate all you guys jumping on here. Let's see. I'll read a couple comments. Andy Barker says, figures NASCAR. Too bad they can't charge NASCAR with penalties. K2 says, hey, Charlie, thanks for the update. I'm not a reporter. I'm just kind of reading what's going on. So again, all the credit to Jeff Gluck, Bob Pockrass, and the first couple stories, I was just taking it directly from NASCAR.com. Let's see. Here we go. Go Fast Racing 88 says they should treat everyone how they treated Bubba Wallace and Chase, no questions asked, right? And that's why Mike Forty went out of his way to explain why, in their opinion, this one was different with Austin Cindric being on a road course at COTA, no caution being thrown. That was their explanation. This is not my opinion. That was their explanation to why Austin Cindric was not suspended a race and why Bubba Wallace and Chase were at the 1.5-mile tracks. Let's see. Douglas Polson says they should not be penalizing based on the result, but simply the action. Jamie Williams says hi. Well, hi, Jamie. How you doing? Boom. There you go. I didn't leave it up there long enough. Let's see. We got Go Fast Racing again. The rule book should always be the same. If I right hook a guy at my local track, I get kicked out. So the next week, if someone does it, they also should be kicked out. I get that. All right. People are alleging Roger sent NASCAR a big fat check for no penalty. You always got to love the conspiracy theories. We love it. It's fun. Come on, it's part of it. Who's Your Daddy says they make up rules as they go. I understand why people think that way as well, especially with the cutting of the turns during COTA, which they basically switched that on the fly this past weekend at COTA. Let's see. Old Hickory Andy Jackson says, all these young bucks ain't drivers. Cale Yarborough was. There you go. Center Hill Card says, hey, Charlie. Well, how you doing? Okay. JWC 924. I don't know what else 2311 Racing wants. NASCAR is making sure they're there every week, guaranteed, and they get their share. No one is forcing them to put cars out every week. Let's see. We got Luap Nasla. It's an open book with plenty of extra pages, the NASCAR rule book. Get one at your local bookstore. How about that? Tim Ferguson says, probably 5 years from now, NASCAR will just distribute completely ready-to-race cars and tell the drivers to hop in. How about that? Let's see. Donald Ulrich, what 2311 did was like the guys in the playground getting together and going after the bully. In this case, Donald thinks the bully is NASCAR, and 2311 rallied the troops with Front Row to go after him. All right. Griswold says, go Todd Gilliland and Front Row. All right. I'll tell you what. I said I wasn't going to go very long. I appreciate all you guys watching. Big news stories. You see in the title, Chase Briscoe, penalty overturned at Daytona. He's all good. Austin Cindric was penalized, but not suspended for a race. He just drops big time in the standings. And also NASCAR countersuing 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports for basically what? Not monopolistic actions. I got to get the perfect word here. Okay? Because I don't want to speak out of school here. Monopolistic practices is what 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports are accusing NASCAR of. They're basically saying that Front Row and 2311 engaged in what? Let's see. Practices that are a violation of antitrust law by organizing the boycott during negotiations and other tactics, and the teams trying to sue for better contract terms. In their opinion, NASCAR's, that is a violation of antitrust law. So this whole deal, it's a he said, she said antitrust case. I'm no lawyer. I have no idea what's going on. Hopefully we don't talk about this a ton during the season, and there could be a trial coming up in December. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please comment, like, subscribe. As I said, I'm sure Kenny Wallace will be weighing in on all these topics. Charlie Marlow signing off. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.